Welcome to the All Access Entertainment Podcast. I am your host, Joseph Bruen. An extremely special guest this week, none other than Mr. Johnny Fabulous himself, John Cena Sr. John, thanks so much for taking the time today.
Well, thanks for having me on, Joe. It's an honor. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I mean, you've been at the top of the list since we've started this, so it's great to have you here. And let's, take a deep dive into your career here. You've been a part of the wrestling world for so long, and you've done so much. So let's kind of, take a deep dive into that. So rewinding back to the beginning, growing up as a kid, when did you first discover pro wrestling?
Wow. I don't know. I guess I first discovered pro wrestling in my early teens. I guess around maybe 15 or 16. Uh, I was kind of interested in that. I used to spend a lot of time with my grandfather, and we watched a lot of TV together, he and I. And one of the things that I was permitted to watch was a little bit of pro wrestling. And I always liked it because I heard a lot of talk about it. And I guess once that started, you get the bug, it just follows you.
Right. Who were some of your earliest favorite superstars that you remember seeing?
Well, some of the early guys that I can remember, obviously, you can never, ever, especially in this area, cross off the late, great Bruno Sammartino. That man was really out there. Ivan Koloff, Nikolai Koloff, Volkov. You've got Haystacks Calhoun. I remember him very well.
601 pounds.
Strongbow was out there, but not as much as Wahoo McDaniels, I think, who started the whole thing.
Right.
So those are some of the guys that I stand out there and say, wow, when I look back, long time ago, long time ago.
And you've got 5 sons, all very successful, all different careers for them. And, it's great to see the whole family thrive, basically. Now, other than John Jr., obviously, who has become such a huge part of the wrestling world, were your other sons into wrestling growing up?
No. I would say the only son who would tag along and had some interest would be my son Daniel. The rest of my sons were not into pro wrestling. And I've got to be honest with you, John was interested to a point, but I don't think it was to the point where I'm going to be a pro wrestler. So it was me, John, and Dan. My son Stephen, he was always interested in computers, so that was out. Matt was one of those individuals who enjoyed reading and putting things together, and my son Sean was probably too young then to even think about pro wrestling. So I would say it was just Dan, John, and I. And again, if you think John was interested in become a pro wrestler, then I don't really think so.
Yeah. And at what point did you decide, you know what, this might be something that I can try out and do myself?
Well, Joe, it's kind of a long story, but we'll cut it and make it real short. I used to help promote pro wrestling. And then when I get married, I said, enough. I can't do this. I can't run here, run there. Somebody's got to work and help with the kids. So I kind of stopped. Right after my unfortunate divorce, um, I saw an ad for a ring announcer. And I said, wow, this will be fun. I'll have some fun. I can get involved with something I really love. So I went down to Knuckles Nelson. I'm sure you heard of Knuckles.
Absolutely.
One of the all-time greats. I was very honored and privileged to be allowed to work with him. He's a very humble person, but a great person. Tried out, Knuckles said, it's all right. I got somebody, but I'm looking for a heel manager. Well, you couldn't have picked the right time and the right place. And so right then and there, Johnny Fabulous was born and the character began to evolve and we began to have a lot of fun.
And the rest is history.
2 years after my son, John, I came back into the business.
Okay. All right. So, and I actually remember that my first memory of meeting you in person, Killer Kowalski All-Star Wrestling. I'm the ring announcer for the show. You are a manager on the show, and at this point, I didn't know that you were in the business. Obviously, I was aware of your son, who at that point had been in for about 2 years, like you said. Backstage, Mr. Biggs is back there, and we were very friendly. So we're talking, we're chatting it up. And Mr. Biggs says he's always a ball buster, if you remember. And he comes up to me and he's like, "Oh, that guy over there in the corner, that's John Cena Sr." And I said, "Yeah, sure it is, Mike." And he ended up bringing me over to you, and he's like, "This guy doesn't believe you, but believe me, but this is John Cena Sr." I was like, "Wow, okay." So that's when I first discovered that you were in the business, and you've been such an integral part of the New England scene for so long, since you started, and that was what, 2004 roughly. You've accomplished so much. You've worked for so many different promotions, and you've been a great asset to the business. So I just want to first and foremost say thank you, for all of your contributions, all throughout the years here in the wrestling scene.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm very honored to have been allowed and still being allowed to be part of the young men and women's lives that I have so much fun with going out there and managing. I'm humbled when they say, "Come on in and be part of what we're doing." So thanks to them. It's only thanks to them and the fans that we exist, right, Joe?
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, early on, when you were first helping with the promoting and that sort of thing, and obviously Knuckles Nelson, you mentioned, was a big influence in helping you out there. Well, who were some of the other people that were very helpful or very friendly along the way in the early beginnings of your career?
I have Big Woody was out there, obviously. He was very, very helpful. You had Freight Train, who was out there that I worked with, who kind of guided me along. Walter Kowalski, God rest his soul. He was a chaotic, and I chat with him. We became very close friends. So I took advice from people like him. And then I guess, like everybody else, you kind of, when you walk the trail, you learn from the rest of the people that are out there what the trail is you need and how you need to follow it.
Walter Killer Kowalski, the late great, one of the true pillars of not only New England wrestling, but pro wrestling in general. What are your personal memories? Anything you could share of Walter over the years? What was he like, for fans that have never met him?
For the fans that never met him, all they know is what they saw, and that was this ferocious guy out there stomping, yelling, yeah, putting a claw hold on your stomach, making you submit, ripping off an ear of a wrestler who another a guy that I watched when I was a kid, Yukon Eric, something that wasn't supposed to happen. It happened, and look at the great storyline it turned out to be. It wasn't intentional, it was unintentional. Same thing with Mick Foley when his ear got ripped off. Um, Walter was a very humble, genuine, real human being. I used to call him the gentle giant.
Yeah.
People would see this character inside the ring who had so much depth and so much knowledge, and he was never ever afraid to share that knowledge with anyone who asked. He worked at Chaotic for a while, and shared that knowledge with the young men and women. Um, Very religious guy. I don't think too many people knew that Walter was a religious kind of fellow, and I don't think many people realize that Killer Kowalski was a vegetarian.
Right.
I remember going to Kowloon and the great Kowloon in Saugus, Mass. As a little shout out to Andy Wong and the family. But he'd go and we're all saying we're gonna have beef, pork, and no, 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 veggie lo mein. It's got to be veggie. So Walter was an amazing individual when you really got to know him.
Yeah. So chiming in your inner fan, when it comes to television promotions, WCW, WWF, even the WWF, what would you say if you had to choose three, your top three matches of all time?
Wow, wow, that's a real tough one because of all the years I've been out there watching those programs. I guess I take one. I guess I got to stick with the WWF WWE right now. I would say Cena and Styles, the last match I just saw, that had to be one of the best. And I really mean that, not because it's my son, but both he and Styles put on a match that for 23 to 28 minutes, that was nothing but short of amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Um, Another match I recall that I thought that I was really amazed at was Edge and Cena in Canada for the belt when they did that tables, ladders, and chairs.
Yes.
I was there at ringside, and I remember Edge's mom, God rest her soul. I think she's passed. I'm not sure. Yes, Edge's mom.
I'm not sure if she's still with us. I'm not sure.
Okay, so I'll take that back. I could be wrong, but I know she was in back, and we were both stunned. That match was outstanding. I think he and Edge had some magic. They really did. And I think, when I look at some of the other matches out there with other wrestlers um, in other areas, I don't know who I'd really pick. It's really tough. I've seen some great stuff with CM Punk. If I go way back when I first started watching pro wrestling, you've got Bruno San Martino who did some amazing stuff. Pedro Morales, you can't let these people go. Ivan Koloff, Nikolai Volkov, Larry Zabisco against Bruno San Martino
There
when
we
he
go.
supposedly broke his neck.
Yep.
Those are some of the things that I remember.
Bruno San Martino, one of the greats, one of the true greats in pro wrestling, and a lot of people don't realize. He sold out Madison Square Garden, uh, almost solely because he was on the show for so many consecutive events, and it was a big deal, especially back then. So Bruno San Martino, one of the true men who paved the way for today's wrestling stars. And when you mentioned John Cena, AJ Styles, just seeing that on paper before it happened, we knew we were going to be in for a treat, and that's exactly what we got beyond expectations.
Amazing, amazing. And I would even say John's last match in Boston against Dirty Dom. I think that was another good match that I hope people really enjoyed because it was an enjoyable type match. It was an enjoyable match, and I think he and Dirty Dom did a great match there, and it remains to be seen now what happens in San Diego. Will
Yes,
Dom win? Will Cena retain? We'll see.
right. Now, when it comes to John Jr., at what point did he decide, you know what, I'm going to give it a go?
Well, let's put it this way. I think you're familiar with the story. If not, I'll refresh everyone's memory about how I drove John to Logan Airport because I guess he said he had enough of the old man and he wanted to get away. And he was going to go to California for bodybuilding. I drove him to the airport. We get there, and I remember distinctly, and so does he, um, giving him a silver dollar. And he said to me, "What's this for?" I said, "This is because you'll never make it. Quote unquote, you'll never make it." Um, he promised me he had a place to live. He promised me he had a full time job, which he did, 80 hours a week at Gold's Gym. He was homeless by choice, by the way. He worked 80 hours, slept in his car, showered at the gym, worked out, uh, wanted to be a bodybuilder, I guess, there. Wasn't quite sure which direction he was headed on. And along comes two people from UPW, excuse me, who worked out at that gym and asked him if he ever thought about pro wrestling. And John's answer was, my dad used to promote it. We were heavy into it, watching it on TV. They called me the old man. The old man was the first guy to get cable TV so we could watch professional wrestling.
Right.
And I guess after that, that's when it all started because I got a call from John and he said, I've got an extra job. And I said, what's it, selling hot dogs on the street? And he said, no, I'm going to be a pro wrestler. I said, okay, right. I believe you. So to prove he was right or wrong, I took a flight to California. And that's where it all started. And I remember saw the podcast where John was asked about myself and what I thought. He said, I just got to put it to you this way. When I left for California, my dad gave me a silver dollar and said, you'll never make it. Well, that's all he needed to hear. He said, either my father was the world's biggest asshole or the world's biggest genius because look at what's happened.
Yeah. Yep. And
So
it
that's
started
how he
with
started.
UPW, of course, and his early stages there. He was known as Prototype and would come back to the New England area, wrestle a few matches for Chaotic Wrestling, New England Championship Wrestling, and we would kind of see him throughout this area. And it was very quick that he got the call, and we'd see him, in the WWF. So it came pretty quickly for John, and he obviously is a natural, and he's been on top. He has been on top the entire run. So one of the most successful runs in pro wrestling history, arguably, and without a doubt, in my mind. So let's talk about the John Cena retirement tour. What are your thoughts so far about how they've kind of done this with the different opponents, and if you had to choose one, who would it be for that last opponent at Saturday night's main event?
Well, it certainly wouldn't be Gunther, that's for sure. I don't think that that's a wise move. I don't think the fans would enjoy that move. Myself personally, Gunther does not need the rub. And by the way, I'm not a fan of on the way out, you've got to push somebody over the top. You're supposed to pass, quote unquote, the torch. I don't know whether that's written anywhere in professional wrestling. If we have to use that as an analogy, then he's already done that with Cody Rhodes. He beat him for the title. He gave the title back. They embraced, as you saw. Cody was teary eyed. The torch was passed. So, my thought is there anybody that needs the rub? I think he's given the rub along the way, especially with Dominic Mysterio. That was a tremendous deal. This second match will be another rub. Um, who else do I think he should face? I really wish that Kurt Angle was able to get back in the ring because that would be an outstanding last match for Cena and Angle. I think, and I say this all the time, I really truly believe that um, Coburn should not have been Angle's opponent for his retirement match. It should have been Cena. Um, who would I like to see John face? Obviously, I just kind of emphasize that. I would say Kurt Angle number one. I would say Adam Copeland number two. I would say Chris Jericho number three. And a wild card on my part, I'd love to see John Cena face JBL.
Oh, there you go.
Those would be my four choices. Um, you know, I really think that that would make for a great last dance. Were over or not, it would make for a great show. I mean, obviously, you hear all the fans out there, oh, it's time for Breaker, it's time for, this guy, it's time for that guy. Their time is now, as the song goes, and their time is coming. You can see the buildup they're already receiving. They don't need any more than what they already have.
Sure.
So I just kind of think that that would be my four choices. If anybody, that would be my four choices that I think the fans would enjoy, especially Angle Cena, Angle JBL, Angle Jericho. Like I say, those are the kinds of things that I look for.
Yeah. You mentioned JBL. Obviously, a great name in pro wrestling. Has been involved for so many years, so many different characters over the years, and all very successful. He actually came and helped out the MWF for a little while there, as you remember, and being a
I
part
certainly do.
of that promotion there. Why don't we talk about that MWF? You were a big part of that for so long here in the New England scene. Dan Marotti, the late Dan Marotti. What are your memories of working for the MWF and your memories of the late Dan Marotti?
Well, working for the MWF was truly fun and tense. And I mean that. I mean it from the standpoint that when Dan and I did a TV show, you really never knew what was going to happen. I only take a, and I'm not going to reference the wrestler's name or names, but there was an incident there where I guess somebody was a little bit out of line, making comments about Linda McMahon and other people that never should have aired, that never should have been part of what I call letting people behind the curtain. Um, you know, we had some great talent there. We always had the Iron Sheik, the Berserker, Marty Jannetty. We had the Boogeyman. I worked. Holly Race was there. Uh, so those were highlights, and Dan was very cognizant of what was happening. Like yourself, Joe, and I give you a lot of credit. You're a walking wrestling encyclopedia. You have a lot of knowledge about this business, sir, and I commend you for that because you are a true fan and a true wrestling aficionado, if that's the way to put it. Look at what you've done for the business in terms of your Hall of Fame, in terms of recognizing outstanding individuals and having full knowledge of what's going on. But in terms of Dan Marati, Dan was a personally, Dan was a is a different type of product. Dan, like all of us, had its days. Um, there were days when I walked out on that promotion. I just said, "Look, Dan, I don't operate this way. I don't I don't do things this way." And we had our differences. We really did. Um, I remember that the WWE called me and said, "Oh, JBL's coming in. What is it you intend to use him for in your promotion?" Well, it's not my promotion. It was Dan Marati's promotion. I was just a character within that. I do not like people taking me and saying I am it for them. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way with me. We squared that away. We squared away a few other things. I think he had a great promotion. He always tried to do stuff for the older guys and women in the business. He tried to put on the best wrestling shows he could. You talk about JBL. We really had a lot of fun. I have nothing but respect for John Bradshaw Layfield. If you saw the YouTube video with him and Slickwagger Brown and Tommaso Ciampa when they attacked me in the back, and I remember Layfield's words, "You should have drunk the Kool-Aid and shoved the money down my throat." It was an honor. It was an honor, and Millennium Wrestling Federation, I think, had a lot of promise. Um, and if the good Lord didn't take away my friend, I think we'd have changed the way that things began to happen, and I think the promotion had no place to go but up, up.
Yeah, it was a great promotion and gave fans the opportunity to see some great matches. They'd always have the big meet and greets before the shows, lots of merchandise, and the fans walked away happy. And that was, obviously the most important part of putting together a wrestling event. Another man who was a long part of the MWF, the late great Percy Pringle, Paul Bearer. Any memories of Paul?
Yes, a lot of memories of my friend Percy Pringle, Paul Bearer. He and I became very, very good friends. I worked several shows with him. A gentleman, a true gentleman, who truly loved this business. Who, as you can see, I don't know if you saw the Netflix special they put on about Bill, but
Yes.
that was very touching, but it was also very true. And I remember we'd meet at the airport. We had some shows in North Carolina down there with Dylan Cage with his promotion, or up here at the MWF because he took over as commissioner. When I walked out, I made it very clear that I said, "Bill, I'm leaving. I'm done. I can't do this. I don't like the way it's going." Well, you should take a little more time and think about it. And I said, "Nah, I need some time away, and maybe I'll come back." Very understanding, very helpful. Never ever did he ever turn away from anybody. Said, "Can you help me out? What did you think?" Uh, I can tell you this: that in that documentary, they say he missed his wife very much, and I can tell you that he did. He did. That was, I think, when he began to go down when his wife passed away.
Right.
Um, and then he came back, and then obviously at 54 or whatever it was, his life was over. Great, great human being. We had one of the best talks about professional wrestling. He guided me in many ways, and he and I discussed one thing, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, Joe. One of the things we talked about was, should the Undertaker's streak ever end? And the answer was no,
Yeah.
never,
Exactly.
never. I don't know who, I don't know what through it anybody's mind, but that was a disaster. If you wanted Lesnar to take the belt or to beat him, it would have been great to do it after WrestleMania. But don't break the streak. Don't do it. And we had a lot to talk about in life. He had a great outlook in life. He loved his kids. We talked about them. We talked about some of the days on the road, about who he was with, what they did. He had a lot of stories. There would have been another gentleman who liked Hardy, who liked Foley, like Jake the Snake, could sit down and he could have done a whole show on it.
Yeah.
He's just a great guy. So I have a lot of fond memories of Bill Moody, who was, as you say, Percy Pringle or Paul Bearer.
Yeah. Well, of course. I mean, the Undertaker's streak was so special for the wrestling business that it's something that couldn't be recreated without a doubt, and will never be recreated. We'll never see something like that again. I mean, that was just unbelievable. And I agree, it shouldn't have ended. He should have went out on top. And similar to what you said with Gunther, if Gunther were to be John's final opponent, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, Brock Lesnar was already on top. He didn't need the rub, and he didn't need to be that guy. So it's too bad that it happened that way. And it is what it is at this point.
Well, I think what they try to do with Cena and Lesnar, um, and, I would have written that completely different. Uh, I probably would have switched that around. Heyman came out, gave Lesnar a hug. The Beast is back. He and Cena are going back and forth. Obviously, Lesnar's going to be set up as a villain, but at the same time, to make it work, it would have been kind of nice if he was pounding Cena, and all of a sudden, Cena's pounding Lesnar to the point where he's going to win. Heyman comes out with his two henchmen. Lesnar gives that smile that he does so well, and he's a great human being. Nothing but good words for Lesnar. But out comes Heyman with his henchmen. They get in the ring. They got that look, and they turn and start pounding down Lesnar.
Yeah.
And Cena comes in, and they pound them both down, and they walk out of the ring. And it could be like, "You can't see me now," whatever. But I think it would have been a lot different. I think what they tried to do here was, and I think they went about it the wrong way, was to build him up as the real beast incarnate who on God's earth can beat this individual. And now what they've done is they've taken this character and they made him part of a team. It doesn't make sense because I think one of the guys on that team and Heyman's team is going to destroy Lesnar. So I don't get it. I don't understand the writing. I think there've been some what's the word I want to use? Maybe off-road lines with this farewell tour that just don't make any sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
The heel turn doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Could have done that without Dwayne and without Travis Scott. You didn't need that. If he was going to turn, he should have turned. It shouldn't have been Cena that turned. It should have been Rhodes.
Yeah.
But there again, I sit back. I'm not a writer. I'm just like you. I'm a fan, first of all, and I guess you can say I'm a mark because if I wasn't, I wouldn't be in the business. But I think that was all wrong because the story never ended. The
Right.
story with Cody Rhodes and Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, has never ended, and that's not good. It's not good for business. Let's put it that way.
Right. Rewinding back to 2008, another promotion here in New England that you were a big part of, APCW, Action Pack Championship Wrestling. You brought the Nature Boy Gary Gold right to the top of the promotion. What are your memories of working with Gary Gold over the years and being a part of APCW?
That was a great little promotion. Had a lot of fun with that. I was honored to be able to manage Gary Gold. Um, Gary, as you know, goes way back in terms of wrestling and the leagues that he wrestled for.
Yeah.
He was another guy that was a great mentor if the young people would ask and would listen. But Gary was great to work with, safe to work with, let's put it that way, too, because as you know, in this business, some people in that ring just aren't safe and
Right.
they shouldn't be in that ring. Gary was great. He understood the business. He worked with everybody that was in the business. We had a lot of fun together. Great, great guy.
So circling back to the early 90s, around 1993, WWF had a relationship with the USWA at the time, as well as Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Um, kind of basically since then, we haven't seen anything like that until just recently. Now with AAA being acquired by the WWE and their relationship with TNA. What are your thoughts on WWE starting to reach out and work with other promotions for the first time in so long?
Well, first of all, let's put it this way. Here's where I get myself in trouble, I guess. It's all about business. Let's take a look at AEW. Tony Khan. He's worked a lot, a lot, a lot with the Lucha Libre wrestlers. Well, you haven't seen that with WWE, have you? But there's one way you can see it now because they have AAA. And let's see, Tony Khan bought Ring of Honor, I believe. Am I correct? And he
Yes.
does things with Ring of Honor. And I guess there's talks of maybe selling that. But TNA is another promotion that was kind of, and I've got a lot of friends at TNA, some wrestlers there. But one of the things is TNA was not a top promotion. So what happens? WWE comes in and says, okay, we're going to start working with TNA. You can see that there's more than a workable relationship there. I think there's going to be ultimately a business relationship there when they buy them out, just like they did with WCW. It's good for business. So they'll have that primary, secondary level that they can play back and forth with. They get the Lucha Libre, they get those amazing, amazing Mexican wrestlers who I have nothing but wow. The stuff they do is crazy. And then you've got TNA, who has a lot of good performers in there, but needs that boot to get to the top. And that would be that secondary level. Like you have NXT, but now you have TNA, where you can, instead of bringing the roster from NXT directly into WWE, you can now bring that roster from NXT into a promotion like TNA, give them more of what they need, and then bring them up to the main roster. I think that's what's happening with WWE.
Let's talk a little bit about Mount Rushmore. Now, there's different ways of looking at it, obviously, most successful, personal favorites, however way you really want to look at it. What would you say, being such a longtime fan from Triple WF all the way to today's current product, what would your Mount Rushmore be if you could pick four superstars?
That's a good question, and I guess nobody likes my answer. How can you pick four when you look back on this business to say, give me four of the top guys that have done so much for this business? You and I both can sit back and say, I can give you 24. I might be able to give you 30. When you say, give me four, on what basis would you like me to give you four people that belong on Mount Rushmore? You know, um, People say to me, well, you can't forget Hulk Hogan, God rest his soul. Great guy, great human being. You certainly, and I've worked a lot of shows with Ric Flair. You certainly can't forget Ric Flair and what he's accomplished. Um, Excuse me, who else would you put up there? Bruno San Martino? Would you put Ivan Koloff? You look back and say, Gorgeous George contributed a lot to this business. He's the guy that started all the flamboyancy with the hairpins, the gold hairpins, the spray. You know, how do you judge who belongs at the top of the mountain? I really am a little baffled when I hear people say, no, he Rowdy Roddy Piper. I mean, there's a guy that really, really did a lot. You know, Mark Calloway, The Undertaker. Why isn't he part of what's happening up there? Look at what he did for this business. So for people to say to me, and I'm not being derogatory, pick four, man, oh man, that's to me, that's tough. Uh, but most people would say, all right, John, what do you think? Well, okay, Ric Flair, 17-time heavyweight, a 16-time heavyweight champion. Well, he's been beat by John Cena. So does it mean Cena goes up on Mount Rushmore? Um, I really don't know.
Right.
So Hulk Hogan, was Hulk Hogan at the right place at the right time? And did he have a different style and a different persona that made him get to where he was? Does he belong on Mount Rushmore? If you look at and God rest your soul, brother, but if you look at all the bad stuff that's followed this poor guy in today's world, that might take him off of Mount Rushmore. You see what I'm saying on that?
Sure.
So I think it's kind of tough, Joe. I guess I'm going around in circles with you, which I really shouldn't do. I should be more precise. But I think it's kind of difficult for me to pick four gentlemen, male or female, because you know what's bothering me about this Mount Rushmore thing? Everybody I've spoken to has named four men. Four men. What about the fabulous Moolah?
Right.
What about May? Are we forgetting Lalani Kai? Are we forgetting about who really contributed to this business? It hasn't been just men.
Yeah.
What about the little people out there?
Yeah.
Hogswall, what about him? So who really belongs there? Because when we discuss, as you and I are right now, we're really talking about people who have really contributed to this business. So, male or female, all I know is that every time I do a podcast or I talk about people about Mount Rushmore, it's four men. Something wrong with this picture.
You can
Something wrong
certainly.
with this picture. So
Yeah.
if I can joke a little bit, I'd say, well, I'd have to put the fabulous Moolah up there, even though she was hard to work with and tough. Look what she did for women's wrestling. What about May? May Young. Look at what she did for women's wrestling. You know, you look at the little guys out there. Hogswall, I'm just bringing him up because I've done some stuff with him for the little people, brought them into this business. Uh, what about the Spanish wrestlers who brought their brethren and sisters into this? So again, it's hard for me to pick four because I think in some ways it becomes discriminatory and it really isn't based on what I call let's pick the four top that have really contributed the most. Okay, if you want to do that, then let's take it category by category.
Right. And that's completely understandable. And you mentioned Leilani Kai, WWF women's legend, former champion, of course. Leilani Kai finally signed a Legends deal. It's great to see her being recognized. Somebody I've wondered about for years. Why are they not utilizing her? She's still around. She's fully able to mix it up with the young girls and help them backstage and give some feedback and make some appearances like she has recently. It reminds me of the WWE Hall of Fame. Is there anybody that comes to mind for you personally that you'd like to see in the hall that isn't in yet?
Yeah, I really would. I think it's time China gets elected into the Hall of Fame. And people say to me, well, look at her background. Well, let's take a look at who got inducted or was up for induction and the problems they had with them. That's where I begin to sit back and say, it's a little bit unfair.
Yeah.
It's a little bit unfair. I'm looking at people and I say, look what she contributed to this wrestling business. Um, I'm looking at who they're selecting this year for the Hall of Fame. Um, hmm, I might have some issues with a few people there. I had some issues last year with a few people there. Um, and sometimes I have an issue with the whole Hall of Fame thing. You do a great job with your Hall of Fame. Excuse me one second.
Sure.
I just came back from Florida and I don't know why, but I got this cold that won't leave me.
It's chasing
Um,
you.
so there are plenty of people. Axe and Smash are finally going to be recognized at the Hall of Fame. Why did it take so long for these guys who paved the way, who belong in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
And my argument has always been, and maybe I'm wrong in my analysis, but if you're going to have a Hall of Fame, why don't we have a building? Why don't we have an actual wrestling Hall of Fame, other than give out a ring and give out a certificate? I'm not knocking it because, in one way, it's a way to recognize those individuals who have done an outstanding job. But at the same time, when I go back on my day, I'm going, well, why did it take so long for Ash and Smash? And why are we, and again, I probably get in trouble, but why are we not recognizing this young woman who had an unfortunate life Why are we not taking her? She look at what she did for women's wrestling.
Yeah.
Why? Why? Because she left and she had some errors in her life and mistakes. Look at who of some of the guys that they elected or put into the Hall of Fame, and let's go back and see what they had.
Yeah.
Abuse, we get beating people up, and these guys are in. There's something wrong with this picture. Who would I like to see in there? There's a lot of people out there I think that are deserving of it. How you select that, you know, I'm looking at who they've got so far this year. Okay. I'm just saying, okay. What's your take on it? What do you think of this year's selection? Who do you think belongs in that Hall of Fame?
Well, without
Because
a
I'm a
doubt.
little
Oh, sorry. Go
yeah.
ahead.
No, you're fine. Shoot.
Demolition. I mean, they were at the top of my list for years and years now. So, I mean, I'm glad that that's finally happening for them. That's long overdue, without a doubt. I think Leilani Kai would be a great selection.
Yep.
I've always thought that Leilani Kai, um, Velvet McIntyre would be great. There's a few of the ladies wrestlers that aren't in that should be in my opinion. Rick Martel, I think, is
Yep.
another great option, as well as Tony Gurria.
Yep.
So some of these guys are just I don't know, they're being skipped over year after year after year. And I get it how, with Hall of Fames, you want to put in people from different eras every year. I get that. You want to have a good mix for different audiences to tune in, but at the same time, we're just completely passing the old era and just continuing on with Attitude Era on. And it's like, well, wait a minute, hold on, let's back it up a little bit. We've got plenty of talents that need to be recognized.
Where's Chief J Strongbow? He's not in there. It's where are these guys that, say what you want, um, but I have to agree with you that there. Why do we bypass some of these individuals that really belong in the WWE, WWF Hall of Fame? I don't understand, and the women especially,
Yeah,
and the midgets. Nobody's done anything for the small people.
right.
It's like, wow, okay,
Tiger Jackson, another great talent, great asset to the business.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So I have my own feelings on it. I get in trouble for saying that, but
yeah.
that's fun.
Now, when it comes to merchandise, your son has had more merchandise than most, and has been without a doubt, one of the most successful in merchandise sales. You got to guess, with all the different shirts alone that he's had, but never mind all the other merchandise. Is there a favorite piece of your son's merchandise over the years? If you could pick something that just really stood out to you, or was your personal favorite?
Right now, I'd say yes. I am really intrigued. I don't know if you have one. I have a couple here right now. The Last Time Is Now belt is probably one of the finest pieces of work I've seen. It's it's really really artistic. It's heavy. It's a beautiful belt. I have one that's just been framed. I'm going to frame another one. I'm waiting. Hopefully, uh, if my request goes out and he'll answer, I'd love to get a Washington D.C. belt. The Last Time Is Now. Um, that is truly something that I really really think they've done a great job on. Um, T-shirts are T-shirts. I can't think of anything there that would really make me go. I would say that when he first started with the USA spinner,
Yep,
that might be something that stands out of my mind because I have the one of one USA spinner. I have the original belt.
that's right.
Probably there is no other belt. They only made one. I have one.
Wow.
That's it. So I think that is good in the USA, the regular championship when he came up with the spinner for that. I
Yeah,
was intrigued by that also.
yeah. Yeah, very unique piece. I mean, something it's thinking outside the box, and it was a perfect fit to his character, and the whole spin on, no pun intended, spin on the album, and that whole sort of thing. So it was great. So
And
let's
he's got
talk
some
about. Oh, sorry.
good.
Go ahead.
Go.
Johnny Fabulous, the character. Let's talk about it. How did the character become? Now we learned how you got into the business, but let's hear about Johnny Fabulous, the name. You've had so many great pieces of merchandise yourself over the years, whether it be the fabulous cigars, the Fabo Pop, which is just awesome in my opinion. You've had, of course, had the bills, the money. You've had so many different things. Kind of just walk us through that whole process of how you came up with the idea of doing it all.
The whoopie pies now.
That's right.
Um, I have whoopie pies that everybody's crazy for. JFab, um, I just, Knuckles Nelson uh, was responsible for coming up with that name because we discussed it, and part of what we said, or I said, was if I'm going to be a heel, because as you know now, I mostly do face. Um, um, Chris Blackheart's promotion. Um, I did a little bit of a heel turn there. I still am working on that heel turn with him. Hopefully that goes back to the other direction. You don't see me doing much heel anymore. But when Johnny Fabulous was coming about, Knuckles and I were talking about this character, and I said, what do people really hate? They hate people who have money. They hate people who are belligerent, who are sarcastic. Um, so Johnny what? We couldn't use Johnny Cash. You couldn't use Johnny Williams. And he said, well, it's got to be Fabulous. Johnny Fabulous was born that day. And I can tell you that when I first started doing JFab, maybe I hit a little too hard because I remember doing some stuff at the Salisbury Pavilion because that's where he was, Star Wars Wrestling. Um, Miss New Hampshire was there, and I guess I berated her so much I had her in tears. So that was a little too heavy for JFab, I guess. Um, and then with the merchandise, one of the things I thought of was, gee, money, money. What about money? $1 million bills, not hundreds, not five, millions. So we did that. And then I said, well, Fabo Pop. What about soda? Because everyone pops for Fabo Pop. So we had the soda. I am a cigar smoker. I had somebody roll and make cigars for me. I just did another, I think I did 50 or 60 cigars. Those are all gone. Um, I have the whoopie pies now that people are really intrigued by. I have a fellow in Maine, Brian, who bakes them for me. Would you whoopie pies? Um, Outstanding. It's just an idea. I have a T-shirt that I had with my dollar bills on it. Fabo, and on the back, it's great to be fabulous. And I actually have a picture of a very good friend who I have nothing but good words for, and people hate it when I say it, but I have a photograph of Vince McMahon wearing my T-shirt. So the T-shirts came into being, and I just tried to get so into the character and promote whatever I could to put this character over. So that's, I'd come up with these little ideas here and there about shirts, cigars, soda pop. Fabo even had his own wine. I still do that I give away. But that's how it was. The character just developed. Um, Sometimes I get too sarcastic, where my life was threatened, and I got to say that actually had to be walked out by the state police because people threatened to get rid of Fabulous. Let's put it that way.
Wow. Oh
I
my
had a lot of
goodness.
fun paying Johnny Fabulous and being the heel when I managed John Walters and the great Rick Fuller. We had a lot of fun doing that, but I guess that's how it all started, and that's what I tried to do: find something new and different that I could sell to the fans or give to the fans, and just have fun with it.
And can any of that merchandise be purchased online? Do you have a website or is it just in person?
I used to have a website out there, and it got so much to try to handle that and get merchandise out that I just said no. Let's just not do it. So sometimes people will contact me on my Justice of the Peace website. Where can I buy this? I on my X now, X instead of Twitter. I did put out the whole list of whoopie pies. You can buy those directly from Brian, who bakes them up in Maine. I've had people buy a lot of whoopie pies. The Fabo Pop you could buy directly from me. The cigars, I had that through Two Guys Cigar Shop in Salem, New Hampshire. You can still get them through them. But it was just so much, Joe. I couldn't do it all.
Sure.
I couldn't. Only one guy. So now, if you come to an event, the whoopie pies are there. Somebody has asked me about selling Johnny Fabulous neckties. Never thought of that, but maybe that'll be next.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the sound of that. Now, you mentioned two other greats here in the New England scene. Any personal memories of Big Rick Fuller and the Hurricane John Walters?
Yeah, I can tell you. Big Rick Fuller was probably one of the biggest guys I ever managed.
Yeah.
Rick was a great, great guy. He is a great guy. I had a chance to meet up with him at a show that Teddy Goods was doing down at Cisco this summer. He and his wife Wendy were there. It was so great to see him. But Rick was solid. Rick was solid. Rick was a great performer. He really, truly enjoyed the business. I didn't realize he did movies too. Um, but I can remember one time we were doing a show in Lynn, and somebody actually threw something at him, and he was going to go up in the stands. And I go,
Oh
and I'm
boy.
going, no, Rick, it's not worth it. It just isn't worth it. Believe me. Or Rick was a great guy for you had to sell what he sold, gave you. If you didn't, that meant the chops were extra hard and extra heavy.
Oh yes.
John Walters, I call that kid another Dean Malenko. That was a man of a thousand holds. You never knew what you were going to get out of Walters. Walters was the ultimate heel. I remember doing a show with John, and Ric Flair was the referee there. We had so much fun with that. I think one of the greatest matches I remember with John Walters was another man who doesn't wrestle anymore, and I wish he would, was Luis Ortiz.
Latin
They
Flair.
had so much chemistry together. They would sell out a house. Those guys were great. But John was always great to work with, easy to work with. We would never know what we were going to do till we got to the ring. And I'd say, "What do you think, John?" Well, why don't we do this? And we just did it, and it worked. Two great guys. A lot of memories working with both those guys. Walters, I think now does special appearances here and there. I haven't had a call from him in a while about doing anything with him. He comes up from Florida, does a little bit for Chaotic, I think. Uh, Mr. Fuller, I guess he's done. When I saw him, I don't think he wants to get back in. I said, I'd love to have the opportunity to manage you one more time because we had so much fun.
Yeah.
Uh, it was enjoyable, both those guys.
Two great talents for sure here in the New England scene. Rick Fuller, without a doubt, just one of the absolute greats. He was a big man that could actually go. He was a big man that could move, and that didn't, being his size, didn't limit him in any way. And he was a special talent for sure.
One of a kind, one of a kind. And when he won, it was believable because you could sell and make you think he's going to lose. And then he came back as what the big guy should do. The giant never got off his feet, and he just nailed you and won that match.
Yeah.
And you could believe it. You could believe that there was this fury and terror in that guy. So him and Walters was the same way. You would never know what to expect because he'd always come up with some different moves.
Right.
Great guy.
Now, why don't you tell us about that very famous evening, or here in the New England scene, chaotic wrestling, where Mr. McMahon made his only in-ring appearance at an independent show. You were heavily involved in that event. Why don't you just tell us, what that was like in person, and how it all went down?
Well, my son Daniel, who is now retired from the police department on disability because of what happened, was involved in a head-on collision with a drunk driver. Uh, and it's amazing how the state of Massachusetts, after this guy's fifth offense, was going to give him back his license. Just tells you the stupidity that's involved in the system. Anyway, I went to Chaotic, asked Jamie Jamakowski if we could put a show together. He said yes. We went down to Connecticut. We met with some people down there. We got the okay. They gave us some stuff, and then I remember getting a phone call from Vince saying, "Yeah, remember, put me on that poster because I'm going to be there." And everybody said, "It's a pipe dream, Cena. It ain't happening. It's just not going to be. And I said, all I know is this: that man is a man of his word. He's a great human being. I don't care. We all got skeletons. We all got shit that we've done that people, we don't want to face, but we have to pay for our deeds at some point. Um, and so I remember John was part of that show, if you remember.
Yeah.
John was part of that show. That was a sold out show, by the way. We raised $45,000 to give. We gave some to Mothers Against Drunk Driving. We took care of the local police, state police with um, portable breathalyzers. Long story short, um, I said to John, I think Vince is going to show up. He said, Dad, there's not, perfect word, no chance, no chance. Um, Vince assured me he'd be there. He wanted to put him on the poster. They didn't do that. So I'm in the middle of the ring with Cherry, get knocked out. Malonis is the heel. I get knocked out by the face, which is Fuller. Um, and next thing I know, I'm on the ground. I come back up. I look. There's this guy looking at me, and it's Vincent Kennedy McMahon. And I looked up and I said, "What are you doing in my ring?" And he just said, "Anything I want." And that was it. What a highlight! What a great thrill! An honor to think that he and his wife would take their private flight, which they did, time out of a busy schedule, him and Linda, to come down to the school and keep a promise so that the fans could be entertained by one of the all-time greats, Vincent Kennedy McMahon. It was just like, wow. And after the show, I went back to my son and said, so no chance, huh?
I mean, to have Vince and your son on an independent show here in New England, it doesn't get any bigger than that, and it will never be any bigger than that. That is for sure. Now, when it comes to television, you've made so many television appearances, always in the front row, supporting your son, of course. And sometimes it got a little hairy with people like Randy Orton, and different things would happen. What was it like working with Randy Orton and being a part of that big scenario with the big kick?
Well, I always say this to people. I'll be walking down the street and somebody will stop and go, hey, I know you. And I'm saying, oh well, they're gonna say, hey, you're Johnny Fabulous, John Cena Sr., John's dad. No, they go, I said, well, how do you know me? They go, you're the guy that Randy Orton kicked in the head. See, and that all changed down the road, obviously, but that was really tough because Orton was my nemesis, as well as Adam Copeland and a few other people. If you can remember, and I joke, I kiddingly joke, I say, when I get a call from the WWE to be part of the show, I know I'm going to get, just going to beat me up. That's about it. Pulled over a rail or whatever. But that deal with Orton, um, when they say that it's not for real, I was busted wide open and knocked out. I don't know if people saw that, but I kind of felt I was the Patriots football and somebody was driving it home. So that was really tough. Randy was an excellent guy to work with. I main evented with him when they did the deal with, John Cena's going to wrestle Randy Orton. And John said, that's fine. And they said, no, John Cena Sr. is going to wrestle Randy Orton. Um, that was really an honor to be the main event. I guess I did okay because nobody yelled at me. But Orton was a sheer professional. I think in his younger days, when I had to work with him, maybe a little bit of an attitude, but he's really, in my opinion, what an athlete, what a great human being. Same thing with Adam Copeland when he came to the house. Um, you know, him and Amy Dumas, two great people. I know Bruce Pritchard would always tell you the story about how Vince hated that piece, thought it was the worst piece of crap he's ever seen. But you know how much mileage they've got out of that in the kick?
Yeah.
A lot, a lot. So it was fun. It was an honor and a privilege to be able to do that. I think my toughest guy to work with was Orton.
Yeah.
Uh, but outside of that, it was fun. I was honored. I'm just a little guy, and believe me when I say this to you, sir, I mean it. I'm a nobody. I'm a nobody who's been allowed to work with some great people, great folks, and young people. So I'm on it and humbled.
Well, you're a somebody to many, that is for sure.
Well, thank you.
The Boston Garden, one of the legendary spots. Obviously, it's had different iterations, different names over the years. But before they tore it down, the original Boston Garden. Do you have any memories?
I do. I do because John Cena in his visit to Boston for the last time is now pointed up and said, "This brings back a lot of memories to me because that's where it all started." I remember taking my son Dan and John to the Boston Garden, and then it was inexpensive then to go to the Boston Garden. I think the nosebleed seats, as they're referred to, were like $12 or $15, and we would always be in the nosebleed section because I couldn't afford anything else. And I always remember my two sons. I'd be sitting up there with my hands on the chair, frozen, frozen. And if you've been up there, it's a straight shot down. And the boys would say to me, "Pops, what's up? You're not moving and you're stuck." I said, "Guys, I'm afraid of heights. I'm afraid." And here I am up there in this nosebleed section watching all these Don Leo Jonathan, watching all these guys, Andre the Giant, Bruno San Martino, Wolfman, Jake the Snake Roberts up there in the high seats. There are so many memories there. I remember I was working for the Salem News um, in the morning before I went. I did that before I went to school to college, so I did that before I went to class. And Tony Romano, I don't think he's still around anymore. God rest his soul, but he was a sports editor. He said, "Look, I keep getting these wrestling tickets. I need somebody to write for me." I said, "Look, I'll do it if you can." And they were ringside. They were great. So I believe it was Bruno Sammartino against Nikolai Volkov or Ivan. I forget which one. I think it might be Ivan because he beat him for the championship at Boston Garden.
Wow. Yeah.
And at that time, Joe, there were no soft chairs for ringside. There were those hard folding chairs. When he got beat, people were actually putting their feet through the chairs, picking them up, and then we're going to go nail this Russian guy that just beat Bruno Sammartino. That was nuts, nuts. And I remember Don Leo Jonathan was fighting Pedro Morales, and if you remember, there was never a net over the ring.
Right.
And the next time you went, there was a net over the ring. I couldn't believe it. Here I am sitting in my chair, and I'm seeing this stuff go by me. They were throwing, and then there were glass bottles. If you remember when they sold the beer, they
Yeah.
were throwing glass bottles at the wrestlers in the ring.
My
How
God.
stupid.
Yeah.
But those are the kinds of things I remember. I remember, like I say, the loss of championships, the winning of championships, seeing the great stars. Pedro Morales, another great, great human being, um, win titles. A lot of good memories. The Garden holds a different genre now than it did back then, because the crowd that comes to the Garden now understands that it's entertainment. The folks I went to the Boston Garden with believed it was real.
Right.
You were caught up in the fantasy. So the Garden was a whole different electrifying atmosphere.
Yeah.
It was true, sincere fans there. It was crazy. It still is crazy now, but in a different way. You would never see um, a Bruno Sammartino walk in the front door of the Kowloon with a Killer Kowalski.
Right.
Face and heel. Never happened. Never happened. So it holds a lot of special memories there. I was sad when the Garden changed over. I don't know if it's for the better, but it is what it is. You got to do what's best for business.
Yeah. And you've mentioned it a couple times. Let's talk about the iconic Kowloon. Kowloon is a cornerstone here in New England for eatery. My personal favorite restaurant, and that goes with, for a lot of people here in New England. Of course, you are considered, the godfather of Kowloon. You're a big part of it. You're always there. And they appreciate that. And you guys have had a great friendship over the years. You know, some personal memories of Kowloon over the years and what you think Kowloon means to the New England scene. And in closing, as far as the Kowloon aspect, it's changing. It's going to be downsizing to about 300 plus. Your thoughts on that change as well?
The Kowloon starts out with a very young man who went there for a prom. That's when I was first introduced to the Kowloon. Uh, then, as the wrestlers went back to the Kowloon, it became a place for me to meet the superstars that I've seen on TV. Then, when I became more involved in it, it was a place for me to go and be part of that. It is not. It still is, but now it's a place where I go to enjoy a great meal. The Wong family, Andy, Bobby, that whole team, waiters, wait staff, kitchen staff, everybody involved there. At the Kowloon, you're not a customer. They treat you as family. You know, Joe, you've been there enough.
Yeah.
Birthday Joe, I say, Birthday Joe's coming up. He's going to be at the Kowloon.
Right.
Um, the food there is outstanding. The hospitality is outstanding. It's been around, and if you saw what John did, he did a tribute to him for their 75 years in business. That's unheard of for a restaurant. A time 75 years. Um, the food is great. The staff is great. The superstars that have been there and commented is just unbelievable. It's reached a point in life, like everything else, where the kids involved just don't want that lifestyle anymore. They don't want to work 24/7. And who can blame them? Who can blame them?
Sure.
When will the Kowloon be torn down, if ever? I can remember when it first came out. The place is packed now. You can't even get in there. You can't even get in.
Yeah.
Um, maybe 2 years from now, maybe 3 years from now. But you're absolutely right. It's going to be the passing of a legacy. It's become that iconic spot where people come, and I'm going to use this word, from all over the country. It's become a destination point, a destination point. And now what's going to happen is it's all going to come to an end with the big Kowloon, which seats 1,300. 1,300. The new one will probably seat, as you say, 300 to 500, and that'll be it. So there always will be a Kowloon, but I don't think it'll be the magnitude to where it is now. And it was a lot of special memories. For me, it's where I met some special people. It's where I had a lot of fun during high school and college. And then all of a sudden, it's like the Hilltop Steakhouse. We're going to erase that,
Right.
And I think the wrestlers that go there have a lot of fond memories of going to the Kowloon. I think it was Mick Foley that really started that when he won the title in Worcester from The Rock. He and Castanetti went back for dinner, and that's when it all started.
Yeah.
So the Kowloon means a lot to a lot of people. It means home, it means food, it means friendliness, joy, you know, and part of that's going to be wiped away.
Yeah. Well, at least it'll still be there in some form or fashion, and we're not losing it altogether. But it's
Oh,
all about the memories that we've created over the years there. And I certainly encourage, if you haven't been to Kowloon, the fans watching, check it out, especially before they go through this change. You got to experience it in its original form. And it's just an amazing place. They've got the comedy club there, they've got multiple bars. So you can have a full night out for sure.
yeah, because you know what? The last time is now.
Exactly. Exactly. Jack Ritchie Sports Arena. Did you ever get the opportunity to attend that facility in North Attleboro?
I have never had.
Another legendary spot in the New England area. What advice do you have for fans? Not for fans, I'm sorry, for somebody that's looking to get into the business? Maybe they want to be a manager themselves, or maybe they just want to get in a different capacity. What advice do you have for that individual?
I suppose I say this all the time. First, have respect because some people have lost respect for this business. You know, two, I guess my top priority is you really have to want this. It's not about going to school, learning how to bump, and then getting in a ring. It's about really wanting to work your ass off to get where you want to go. I mean, look at some of the guys that they are now: Rollins, Punk, Cena. Look at Stone Cold. Look what they did to get where they wanted to go. I say work hard. enjoy what you do, whether it's on the indies or the big leagues. Enjoy it. Have fun. Have respect for the business. I know. Never be afraid to ask or give back. And I think if you follow that route, then you have no choice but to be a success. But the young people today, it's completely different. I can remember doing a show with Gina Martino with Powerhouse Wrestling, and we're in the back getting ready to go on, and Roddy Piper was on the card. Do you know nobody would stand up and give him a chair?
Oh my
That's what
gosh.
I mean. Total lack of respect. It's not what I see in this business now. It's all about me. No, if you're going to get involved in this business, remember it's all about us. It's a we thing, not a me thing. And I say that to people. Work hard, be sincere, have respect, don't be afraid to ask, and you've got a shot. Don't be the guy or the lady that takes the course, goes out, does your thing, and think you're going to make it to the top. Because let me tell you something, 1 in 10,000 make it to the ring.
Yeah. Well, you've had so many wonderful moments in your wrestling career. If you could choose one, is there one that stands out more than the others? Maybe your favorite personal moment in the business?
I guess, yeah, I would say yes. I would say having had the opportunity to work with my son in the WWE.
Yeah.
That was very, very touching to be able to be a part of what he experiences. I don't think there's too many fathers that can do that with their sons who are pro wrestlers. I was honored, very honored by that. So that's very special to me. I hold that very close.
Yeah. On the grand stage means a lot. And in closing, fast forward many years from now, what do you want your legacy to be? How do you want to be remembered?
I said this, and my son, um, he said it when somebody asked him the question, so I'll repeat it because this is truly how I feel. I'm very thankful I've been honored, and I mean honored, to be allowed to be part of these promotions that I work for, and have been allowed to work with some of these young men and women who have made it to the top. Kofi Kingston, Sasha Banks, Tommaso Ciampa. I'm very honored by that. And I hope that I leave it a little bit better than I found it. That's about it. And that I've made a lot of fans happy and they've enjoyed what they've seen. That's pretty much it.
John, thank you so much for taking the time and being a part of this. It's been our pleasure for sure. For John Cena Sr., Johnny Fabulous, I'm Joseph Bruen. This is the All Access Entertainment Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And thank you so much for tuning in.